So when you hear the name Jane Austen, what pops into your head? I'm guessing it's witty heroines, maybe some brooding gentlemen, elegant ballrooms, sharp, classy social commentary. But what if I told you that before all of that, there was just utter madness, melodrama, and a very, very confused cucumber?
Just listen to this line. They told me Edward was not dead, but they deceived me. They took him for a cucumber. I mean, let that sink in. Who do you think wrote that? Some surrealist poet, maybe? A modern sketch comedy writer? The absurdity is just, it's off the charts. But the author? I promise it's someone you would never, ever guess. Yep, that line was written by the Jane Austen, the very same woman who gave us Pride and Prejudice. And here's the thing. Before she became this master of subtle romance and irony, a teenage Jane Austen was writing some of the wildest, most hilarious parodies you can possibly imagine.
See, as a teenager, Austen wrote this whole collection of stories that we now call her juvenilia, basically her early stuff. And in these stories, she wasn't trying to write the next great romance, oh no. She was busy tearing the popular books of her day to absolute shreds. And her main target was this literary trend called sensibility.
So what was sensibility? Well, it was this whole idea that having these huge, overwhelming, and very, very public emotions was a sign of a good and noble soul. The more you cried, the more you fainted, the more you just fell into total despair over the smallest thing, well, the better a person you were. It was basically emotional performance art, and you can just imagine young Jane Austen rolling her eyes and finding the whole thing completely ridiculous.
So, naturally, her first target was romance. Let's take a look at how our early characters handled love. Hint, it wasn't with quiet dignity. It was with the most impractical, over-the-top, hysterical behavior imaginable. Okay, so here, Austen is taking that romantic idea of living on love and making it completely literal. Edward's told that his beloved Laura might need, food and water to survive, and his response is basically, food? Why on earth would she need food when she has my love? It's such a perfect jab at the idea that passion alone can actually sustain you.
And love in these stories, it wasn't some slow burn. It was an instant, all-consuming bonfire. This character has known Henrietta for a whopping 1 month, but he talks like he's been through a lifetime of epic devotion. In Austen's parody world, there's no getting to know you. You just see someone across a room, and bam, your soul is theirs forever. Done deal.
And this is the brilliant downside to all that emotion. These characters' feelings are so exquisite, so incredibly fragile, that you can't even make small talk with them. You can't start any other topic. You have to walk on eggshells because you're terrified that some random comment about the weather might trigger a full-on emotional meltdown. It's like navigating a minefield of feelings.
So if you thought the way her characters fell in love was absurd, oh, just you wait. The way they handle tragedy is even better. Austen takes the extreme melodrama of grief from those sentimental novels and just cranks the dial all the way up until it shatters into pure comedy.
So, let me ask you, if you're living in this world of sensibility and you're faced with just terrible, awful news, what is the proper response? Do you process it quietly? Maybe talk it over with a friend? Nope. There is a very specific and very dramatic procedure that you have to follow.
It's a simple 3-step process. First, you weep. But, and this is important, in vain. Then you sigh, also in vain. And for the grand finale, you faint. Austen actually writes that when one character didn't come back, the heroines could not support it, we could only faint. It's not just an option, it's a required, almost theatrical performance of sorrow.
And that, my friends, brings us back to the cucumber. This is the absolute peak of that performative grief. The character, Mary, is in such a fit of frenzy that her brain just completely snaps. She hallucinates that her lost love has been mistaken for a vegetable. It is the ultimate expression of a mind so sensible that it's completely broken away from reality. But my absolute favorite part is Austen's satirical take on the physical side effects of all this grieving. Get this. Sophia, who just faints a bunch, ends up catching a cold from being outside. But Laura, who has full-blown fits of frenzy, is perfectly fine. Why? Because her manic raving effectually circulated and warmed her blood so much that she was immune to the cold. The lesson here is clear. A little bit of melodrama is bad for your health, but complete frenzied madness, that's a great way to stay warm. Okay, so this is all incredibly funny. But what's the point of it all?
I mean, how did these wild, chaotic teenage scribbles lead to the literary masterpieces we all know and love? Well, it turns out this chaotic playground was actually the perfect training ground for her genius.
You can really see the journey right here. In her early work, emotion is huge, it's performative, it's public. Later on, in a book like Pride and Prejudice, it becomes deeply internal and quietly felt. The plots go from these absurd, over-the-top disasters to the grounded, realistic social problems she's so famous for. And the satire, this is the key, it evolves from this broad, slapstick comedy into that subtle, razor-sharp social irony that became her trademark. She basically learned to control the volume, turning a shout into a devastating whisper.
So in the end, these early writings weren't just practice. They were her origin story. This is where Jane Austen first started to explore her great theme, that ridiculous, often hilarious gap between who we are on the inside and the social roles we're all forced to play on the outside. She saw the absurdity in performing emotions for an audience, and that sharp observation became the foundation for everything that came later.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? I mean, if this is the kind of sharp, wild, and brilliant satire a teenager was writing over 200 years ago, probably hiding it in her notebooks, what kind of masterpiece is some young writer creating right now, maybe on social media or in some fan fiction, just waiting to be discovered?